Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Health, Environment, Civil Rights, and Engagement Committee on Monday, April 16th, 2018. My name is Councilmember Philippe Cunningham, and I am the chair of this committee. At the dais with me are Council members Fletcher, Schrader, Gordon, and Council Vice President Jenkins. Please let the record reflect that we have a quorum. We have 10 items on our agenda today, including a public hearing on the reappointment of the Civil Rights Director. We will begin with the consent item agenda, then move to the public hearing, followed by the discussion items. We have 6 items on the consent agenda. The first is the Minneapolis Community Environmental Advisory Commission appointment. We are approving a 2-year term of a council appointment of Michelle Shaw, Seat 1, Ward 1. She is a public school teacher and has taught about environmental justice and sponsored an award-winning student-led group. She is active in the State Environmental Quality Board and her neighborhood association. Michelle wants to help SEAC work on composting environmental connection with our aging infrastructure and increasing public outreach and awareness. Thank you, Michelle, for your service. We as decision makers are lucky to have your perspective. The second item is a community solar garden, increasing subscription agreements with IPS Solar, Rena Solar, and US Solar, authorizing an increase in the total amount of community solar garden subscriptions held by the city from 12 million kilowatt hours annually to 20 million kilowatts annually. Number 3 is a master contract amending with Tubman, Pillsbury United Communities, North Point Health and Wellness Center, and the Family Partnership for Continued Health and Human Services Programs. Number 4 is an agreement with Hennepin County to engage in local collaborative time study revenue enhancement activities. 5 is a grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for lead remediation and healthy home services. Accepting a grant from HUD for the Office of Healthy Homes and Lead Hazard Control for an amount not to exceed $2.9 million for a 3-year period, providing lead remediation and healthy home services for a minimum of 190 homes that meet the grant enrollment criteria. And number 6 is a large block event and amplified sound permit for Ninja Warrior from May 19th through 28th. We are approving the application of the Ninja Warrior block event permit to allow the event to set up and be held from Saturday, May 19th to Monday, May 28th, which will include operating outside of hours permitted under Minneapolis Code of Ordinances. So they are asking for a permit on May 25th and 26th to go from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Do any of the council members have any questions? All right, seeing none. To the public who would like to have, if you are curious about any of those consent items, you're able to go to lims.minneapolismn.gov to get more information about what those are. So seeing no questions, I move approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those in favor signify by saying no. The ayes have it. Now we will be moving into our public hearing on the reappointment of Civil Rights Director, considering the reappointment by the Executive Committee of Velma Corbel to the appointed position of Director of Civil Rights for a 2-year term beginning January 2nd, 2018. Excuse me one second. So do we have these? Oh, thank you. All right. So I will open up the public hearing. I have a sign-in sheet, and I'll call the names in the order listed. If anyone is present who would like to speak and did not sign in yet, please see the clerk. So first person we have signed up is Dave Bicking. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Thank you, Mr. Bicking.
Hello, my name is Dave Bicking. I live at 4200 Cedar Avenue South in Minneapolis. As I think about your committee's deliberations on the reappointment of Velma Corbel, I wonder, how much information do you have? I have heard that most council members never receive the performance reviews of the department heads that they are voting on. Have you seen Director Corbel's? Have you even asked for it? In a weak mayor system, your committee directly oversees the Civil Rights Department. You shouldn't micromanage, but are you managing at all? The director should have considerable independence and authority, but this committee, like the board of directors of a nonprofit or business, has the ultimate authority and responsibility. I sure wouldn't want to be responsible for the poor management and the poor results of the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. The most important power you have in your position is the power to hire and fire, and that is exactly what you exercise today. Given what we know, and that you ought to know, it is time to use your power to fire Director Corbel. Are you going to ask any questions of Director Corbel? I noted that City Attorney Susan Siegel never stood for questions at any stage of her reappointment, despite being present in the room. As members of the public, we have questions that can't be answered any other way. We have been frustrated by a stone wall of silence. We submitted a data practice request in December regarding the management consulting that was mandated for Director Corbel back in 2014. Almost 4 months later, we have no response to our request. We asked for information on complaints filed with the Complaint Investigation Division, similar information we receive on complaints to the OPCR. We got a 2-page summary instead. A week ago, I sent you some questions about the results or reports on the management consultant who was hired to coach Ms. Corbel in 2014. At that time, you were supposed to get a report back in 3 months. That would have been June 2014. You never received that report, and no one ever asked for it. So 2 years ago, I sent in some questions about that.
Mr. Bicking, if you could please wrap up your thoughts.
I will keep it going for a little bit. I think this is important. So
Everyone has 2 minutes, sir, so if you could please wrap it up.
That when Ms. Corbel was being reappointed, I got no response. And this year, I have also received no response. Does anyone on your committee care?
Mr. Bicking, if you could please wrap up your thoughts. It's only fair to the rest of the public.
Continue. Are you totally isolated from the information and consequences of your inaction? It sometimes appears you live in a bubble in City Hall. Do you hear anything about the Civil Rights Department except through the glowing reports of its own management? One of Director Corbel's clear faults is a retaliation.
Mr. Bicking, if you could please wrap up your thoughts, that would be very appreciated.
Who have sued the department for retaliation and discrimination. You have approved settlements totaling over $160,000. When you manage a department and communicate almost entirely with its director, you need a method to know what is really happening. Whistleblowers are important. I think you need to know more before making your decision today. You should postpone a vote until you have more information and until you yourselves do the work to gather that information. Are you aware that the Complaint Investigations Division has not posted an annual report since 2014? Given the results of that report and what we have found out since, there is good reason for them to keep that information private from us and I believe from you. 73 cases were submitted to the Civil Rights Commission for a hearing in 2011. In 2017, that had dwindled to 2 cases. Equity is the big buzzword around here, but the Equity Division of the Civil Rights Department has had no new information on their website since 2013. You could look it up. Have you? Should you? You should postpone any vote until you have, quote, done your homework, as the mayor has said about us. Some of you in this committee are new to the city council, and the history of uncaring rubber stamping doesn't apply to you. But if you do not do your homework, you will show you are no better than the members who got voted out last November. Vote no or vote to postpone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bicking. So I should make it, I forgot to mention that we have a 2-minute clock, so let's be respectful of folks' times, please. The next speaker that we have is Todd Schumann. If you could please come to the dais and say your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Todd Schumann. I live at 5048 Vincent Avenue South in Minneapolis. The Civil Rights Director oversees the Office of Police Conduct Review, an institution that since its inception has failed in its mission to provide real community oversight of the Minneapolis Police Department. An effective civilian oversight board should serve as an independent check on police power. Just like how the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is utilized as an independent investigator of police-involved shootings, police should not be the final arbiters of whether their own members have engaged in misconduct. Unfortunately, the current structure of the OPCR brazenly violates this principle. At virtually every step in the OPCR process, sworn officers have a voice in how a complaint is adjudicated. Even when a serious complaint is found to have merit, The recommendation is passed along to the Internal Affairs Unit, with the police chief having final say in whether discipline is issued. Given such a structure, how can community members have faith that their complaint receives an unbiased evaluation? Many people are understandably anxious and fearful about essentially filing a complaint about the police to the police themselves, especially after being verbally or physically traumatized by an officer. This does not even begin to address the Byzantine nature of the complaints process itself, where people are often left in limbo for months, not knowing the status of their case or whether any action was taken. In the wake of numerous high-profile police tragedies in Minneapolis and across the nation, the public is more aware than ever of the potential consequences of police misconduct. Quite frankly, we as a city and as citizens deserve better than what the OPCR offers, and it must be dismantled to make room for an institution that provides truly independent community oversight of the police. Velma Corbel established the OPCR early in her tenure as the Civil Rights Director. I believe we need a new Civil Rights Director to craft its replacement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schuman. I have E. Newton next. You could say your name and the address for the record. Thank you.
Okay. I'm Newton, and I reside at 1346 LaSalle Avenue, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I had no idea what I would say when I got up here, and I know I had a feeling of something to say. And I thank this young gentleman for saying exactly what I wanted to say, because had the people who were boss over these people did their homework, they would never have had someone like Velma in place who is not doing her job, and allowing police brutality to go unsanctioned. I mean, I had an experience the other day because the job wasn't done and it fell down on me. I went into a grocery store and, the convenience store across the street from where I live, and the police officer was standing by the ATM as I was trying to put in my numbers. I was very uncomfortable with that, and I said something about it, and he yelled at me. He cursed me out. He was trying to intimidate me to react to his way of violence so that he would have an excuse to hurt me. And this is what is happening to our people. But by the grace of God, I stood there saying nothing. Silent. Without breath. Like it would have been had he killed me. And then I went home, alive, and able to tell my story to the civil rights people who did nothing. I see that they have 1,843 cases, and only 10 came up to make the police accountable for their actions, because she's not even accountable for her action. You're letting her get away with harming our people, and it's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newton. Next on the list, we have Chuck Turek. If you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Chuck Turek, 2112 Portland. At the end of one of the reappointment hearings for City Attorney Susan Siegel, Mayor Fry strongly suggested that we base our arguments on facts, not just on feelings. I think that's a good idea. Fact number one, I filed a complaint with the Civilian Review Authority alleging multiple ordinance violations of then Police Chief Jim Dolan. Fact number two, the complaint was accepted as a valid complaint by CRA Director Lee Reed. Fact number three, Civil Rights Director Velma Corbel decided my complaint should be dismissed and that I be referred to the mayor's office or the city council. How do I know that? She sent me an email saying that very thing. Fact number four, the CRA ordinance said that the Civil Rights Director, quote, shall not participate in the decision-making process regarding individual CRA complaint files. Conclusion number one, in this instance, Ms. Corbel violated that portion of the ordinance. Fact number five, I have raised this issue with council members before. Fact number 6, no council member ever publicly asked Ms. Corbel about this ordinance violation. Predicted fact, no council member will ask her now either. Feeling number 1, this seems like a small issue. It's not. It's an example of how elected city officials, that is this council and the mayor, pass ordinances and then ignore the later violation of those ordinances when people they appoint don't follow them. This isn't about Director Corbel. This is about you. Fact number 7, facts, especially when they're facts we'd like to ignore, can sometimes be troublesome things. Predicted fact number 2, these facts will have no effect on your decision regarding the reappointment of Director Corbel. Fact number 8, my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turchik. Next up on the list, we have Michelle Gross. You could come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Sorry, I want to take a second to comfort that lady. My name is Michelle Gross, and I am president of the organization Communities United Against Police Brutality that is out of the office 4200 Cedar Avenue, Minneapolis. I came today to present a petition on which we have gathered roughly 250 signatures. This was fairly hastily done, so I think we could have gotten many more signatures had we had more time. And it reads as follows. We oppose the reappointment of Velma Corbel to the position of Director of the Minneapolis Civil Rights Department. Her administration has been marked by failure to uphold our civil rights, failure to hold police accountable, and poor staff management. Her record is indefensible. The Civil Rights Department is important, and we demand that the mayor and city council engage in a search for a candidate who will more effectively advocate for the rights of the residents of Minneapolis. And I will hand this off to the clerk. In addition to that, I want to just say a couple of other things because many of the other points I don't want to reiterate what other people have said, but I do want to raise this. I was there. I've been involved with police accountability in this town for over 25 years. I was there when the Civilian Review Authority was shut down. In fact, I was there before that because I was actually the chair of the redesign working group of the Civilian Review Authority. And once we finished our work and the city ignored it, then they allowed the Civilian Review Authority to kind of basically devolve through lack of resources, lack of investigators, things like that. So they allowed it to be a problem. But the people that were the volunteers, the real community members, worked hard to try to make that agency work. They really worked hard. And it was a place for people to complain to outside of the city's, proper structure, if you will. This was important to the community. This was something the community demanded back in 1990. Right in the immediate aftermath of the killing of Lloyd Smalley and Lillian Weiss. So this was something we demanded. We wanted this. And in a secret process, behind closed doors, the civil rights director, Velma Corbel, new on her assignment, destroyed it. She replaced it with the Office of Police Conduct Review. You have the statistics. These are statistics that we draw directly from the data we get from the city through data practice requests. 1,843 complaints from members of the community. 10 have been sustained and disciplined in 5.5 years. That is an indefensible statistic. That means we have a roughly 0.55% sustained rate where the national average is 7 to 8%. This is just, we're the low-end laughing stock of the country. It's outrageous. Finally, I want to just throw in one more thing, and that's this. This was a pretty tough day for people to get down here. I talked to many people who wanted to be here today to be able to speak, but as you know, of course, we had a major weather catastrophe over the weekend, and the city is still under a snow emergency as we speak. So I would ask that you continue this hearing to another date because there were many people that called me this morning saying they wanted to be here, couldn't get their cars out, couldn't figure out how they were going to get here otherwise. And so it would be greatly appreciated if more people's voices could be heard. I think that's really key. And so I am really asking for that. Again, many people spoke to me that said that they wanted to speak, but just couldn't get here to do it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Gross. Next up, we have Don Samuel. If you could come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. It's great to be here. See you all up there. Glad to be down here. I'm just pleased today to be able to speak to you in support of Velma Corbell and to advocate for and speak on behalf of her reappointment. I joined the council in 2003 and very quickly discovered that the Civil Rights Department was a stepchild of the city, a stepchild department. It was unrespected, it was underfunded, losing funding every year because it seemed that at that time the perception was that was the only way to enforce some kind of consequences for the problems that existed in the department. So the department gradually lost even more prestige as the early years of my tenure continued. There were multiple predecessors for Velma, a high rate of turnover. This was because of the persistent and historical problems of backlogs, management issues, staff capacity, etc. These things were routinely recited and regurgitated, and it seemed like the city could not find the right person who had the reputation, the connection, the grit, and the general capacity to deal with a department that was basically the department of gripes. And that's just what it is. And so we get a nice person, you'll have a nice person, just wasn't tough enough, or you get a tough person, just wasn't gentle enough. It's probably the most difficult position to fill in the city. That's why when Velma came in, she was not the only one, but when Velma came in, we could see right away the transformation of the department, the professionalization of the department. And there was a gradual improvement at every level of the reputation and prestige of the department, the professionalization of the department, the quality of staff improved, the resiliency and cultural competency of the leadership improved. And I just give a little warning, don't even think about replicating the quality of a person as a task that can be easily done. She's a rare and
You could wrap up your thoughts, Mr. Samuel.
great gift for the city. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. Next up on our list, I think it's Tamra Russell. If you could please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Tamara Russell. My son was living in North Minneapolis. I'm here on behalf of him. He passed away on July 23rd, 2015. I found my son deceased in his home at 618 14th Avenue North. I immediately called the police. Upon their arrival, the officers were insensitive to my situation. As the young man's mother saying things like, "Can't anyone smell?" in the reference to the body. The police then told everyone at the scene to please exit the building and wait outside. Another officer then exited the building with my son's wallet raised in the air and said, "I have your son's wallet and there's cash in it." When I asked the officer for it, he simply ignored me and got back into his car. At the time, I assumed maybe they just needed it as evidence, but now, almost 3 years later, I still have not received my son's wallet. I have already attempted to get my son's wallet back by going through both the Internal Affairs Unit and the Civilian Unit with the Police Conduct Review Unit. Both of these endeavors proved fruitless. Everyone I have tried to contact in regards to this issue has either referred me to another dead end or simply told me to leave it alone. However, I cannot leave it alone. As Victor's mother, I feel I'm entitled to some sort of justice. Justice I have not received. I'm reaching out to you, Mr. Cunningham, with the hopes that as a 4th Ward City Council member, you can help me, or at a minimum, put me in touch with the right people who can help me. All I want is to find my son's wallet that was taken by the officers that day and hopefully gain some closure on the issue. Thank you for taking the time. Could I give you a copy of this?
Yes, you can hand it, you can give it to the clerk, and let's make sure that we connect after this. Thank you, Ms. Russell. All right, next up, I have Annette Green. Annette Green? Okay, great. While we wait for her, let's go ahead and move on to the next person. Next up, we have William English. If you could please come to the podium, Mr. English. State your name and address for the record, please.
My name is William English. My address is 12800 50th Avenue North. That's in Plymouth, where I sleep. I live in North Minneapolis, where I spend my money, where I own property. And I've lived in Minneapolis more than 40 years before I moved to Plymouth. I just want to clarify that for the record. First of all, I want to pay my respect to the Vice President of the Council, Vice President Jenkins. Congratulations. I'm proud to see you there. Councilmember Cunningham, it is a change in this city council, and I'm quite proud as a 50-year resident of the city of Minneapolis. And now to the point. I'm probably the oldest person in this room. I'm 83 years old. I've lived in Minneapolis since 1959. When I came here, you could walk around downtown 3 times and not find another person of color. I was the first black salesman ever hired by 3M. I later went to work for Control Data, where I was then the chief diversity officer. Check your records, and you will find that Control Data had one of the outstanding places to work for people of color, where I recruited more than 700 black professionals to come to Minnesota and work for Control Data. I served 32 years there, 17 as a vice president. So I know about the subject for which I am here to address: compliance with both the city, state, and federal ordinances on civil rights. I'm afraid that I must say to you, as the last speaker, Don Samuel, said, part of the issue with the perception of Director Corbel has been an inadequate resourcing of that department. And it started from the beginning. Any civil rights director is only as strong as the people supporting her. That is the council and the president and the mayor. Department heads decides who gets hired. I ask you to look at this department as it is today. It is not the most diverse city in the state. I can assure you of that. So what direct responsibility does the director of the Civil Rights Department have? Now, in terms of the complaint process, the complaint process is a complicated process. It requires solid investigations and then a finding. If you don't know about the police department history in this city over the last 40 years or the years of her tenure, then you've not been awake. The department resisted anything that Director Corbel brought in terms of finding police guilty. And in fact, the police union fought against her. So I'm simply saying this. She is a competent woman. She is a competent administrator. The fact that she's had some better employees, let me just tell you what it means to be an African.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could please wrap it up, Mr.
Okay, I will wrap it up. Thank you. I just want you to know that if you think it's an easy job, being a black person in this job and supervising white people, where the minute you raise your voice, you're considered an intimidated, angry black man, you've not been alive in Babylon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. English. All right, next up we have Annette Green. Sorry, I can't read your second last name, but
I have doctor's handwriting. Good afternoon, everybody, and how y'all doing? My name is Annette Green Renfro. I am here complaining about the Minneapolis Police Department. What's the man name that I'm hollering about? I am hollering about Matrix is his name. I came and I filed complaints for my husband that has been raped. And I have filed complaints about my husband that has been abused and misused about half of y'all staff members. I gave him pictures, I gave him recording, I gave him everything he needed to prove that case. He told me I had to sit back and wait. It has gotten worse and worse and worse. I like to know, what do I fit in at or what he fit in at to get help for his case? If you got to tell me that I got to wait because I sleep outside. I went to civil rights, and they told me to go downstairs, and they told me how to file this paper here, right here. Police conduct. I went there, and I got it in exactly 175 papers against y'all staff, Minneapolis Police Department. I gave them pictures, I gave them recordings, I gave them everything they need to solve this case. I'm still waiting. So what do I get? Where do I go from here? That's all I got to say. Thank you. They got everything downstairs in Internal Affairs that you may need to read that I put up on them.
All right.
Records, recordings, tapes, everything. I won the case for him. Still ain't got no help. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Our last speaker that's signed up is Holly St. Clair. If you could please come to the dais and say your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, I'm Holly St. Clair. I live at 5125 Portland Avenue South. I want to start by recognizing your jobs. Ms. Councilwoman Jenkins, you actually came and spoke to one of my classes when I was a freshman, and it stuck with me. It meant a lot. I know you guys put in a lot of work into everything you do when you're here and also at home. The facts have been laid out in front of you about Velma Corbell's decision-making in her role at the OPCR. I acknowledge the difficulty of her position as Civil Rights Director, but I do believe there are other people better suited for this position. With that, I would like to formally oppose the decision to reappoint her and ask that it's either pushed to a later date so other people would speak, or voted against today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. St. Clair. So we actually have one more signed up person, Janet Nye. Janet, if you could state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you very much.
Janet Nye, 2112 Portland Avenue South. The cases that come to the Police Conduct Oversight Committee for review after going before the Office of Police Conduct Review are somewhat shocking. That officers are so disrespectful of people that they come in contact with should be of great concern to everyone. The complaints I read are strewn with the words nigger, bitch, faggot, motherfucker, and others. Officers ought to be fired for using this inflammatory and escalating language, yet they are virtually never found guilty of this or any other breach of their code of conduct. I hardly believe that all these complainants are making up stories about the police. I'm sorry. And I say this because I know, as many in the community do, also that police retaliate against people who report them for misconduct. I'm now going to read a case that was dismissed as just as an example of the kind of terrible stuff that officers are getting away with. Overview of the complaint. Complainant contends that a bar bouncer assaulted a bar patron, causing him to be knocked unconscious. Complainant states that when the bar patron struck the floor, he began to bleed from his mouth and head. When complainant's friend, a registered nurse, attempted to assist the bar patron, he contends that Officer 1 told her to get her fucking hands off him. After telling the officer that she was a nurse, complainant asserts that Officer 1 told her, "I don't give a fuck." Actually, I think this is against the law. We do have a Good Samaritan law, and you are not to interfere with a person who's aiding someone after an accident or whatever. It's just not supposed to be done. I'd like you to remember that Velma Corbel has no power without your vote. The tragedies that ensue under her leadership are really your responsibility. So think very carefully when you vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nye. Is there anyone else present wishing to speak? Anyone? Anyone? All right. With that, seeing no one else wish to speak, I will close. Excuse me? Oh, do we have someone? So we have one more. We have one more speaker who needed an interpreter. So we got that all together. All right. Well, so we have one more speaker. If we can make sure that the name and address is on the record, that would be greatly appreciated.
Su nombre y apellido y su dirección para los récords.
Buenas tardes, honorables y distinguidos concejales de la ciudad de Minneapolis.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Buenas tardes, distinguida audiencia.
Council members and distinguished audience.
Yo hablo español, he estudiado muchos años también el inglés desde niño, pero no estoy acostumbrado a hablar en público, con ser que mi papá y mis abuelos eran políticos, fueron concejales, diputados a la asamblea de la ciudad en mi país.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking Spanish. I'm not used to speak English in public, but my family has been in the political background for years, and I come here to express my point.
Sí. Hace muchos años, como unos 14 o 15 años, llegué a este bello y hermoso y progresista democrático país. No vine con sueños porque ya todos los sueños los había realizado en mi país. Vine porque mi mamá se vino también para acá y otros hermanos. Un hermano se casó con una bella y hermosa mujer americana procedente de la ciudad o alrededor de Duluth, descendiente de familias europeas, tal vez de Dinamarca.
I've been here for 15 years. My family and my brother moved here, so I came here. I have relatives in Duluth.
Mi problema que vengo a poner en comunicación con ustedes me pasó en mi casa donde vivo en Northeast, cerca a un puesto comando de la policía en la avenida central con calle 19 Northeast, Minneapolis. Me hicieron un robo en mi casa cuando yo no estaba, un domingo en mayo del año 2014.
There was a robbery in my property in Northeast in 2014.
Sí. Se entraron por una ventana, por el basement, a mi cuarto y me sacaron una cantidad de bienes materiales, mi documento de identificación, mi documento de americano, ropa, calzado, el televisor, una computadora y otra cantidad de cosas. En esto también he averiguado y hasta hoy día tengo conocimiento todavía dónde se encuentran esas cosas que me robaron o me sacaron de mi habitación. En esto también les pongo en conocimiento que tuvo parte la misma inspectora de casas que se llama la señora Sharon Larson. Ella continuó haciéndolo visitas cada mes. Yo me he enfermado, como pueden ver, hasta por mi propia voz. Me duele mucho la espalda, las piernas. Okay.
Back in that robbery, I lost a lot of my personal belongings were taken, including documents and computers, and nothing has been determined or found until then. Someone called Sharon Larson has been coming to the property often, but I don't have any further updates.
Pongo en conocimiento y culpo también a la señora Sharon Larson porque ella en los primeros meses, como por un espacio de un año, estuvo entrando con esas personas a mi habitación. Cuando ella iba a hacer las inspecciones, entraba y me decía que dejara las ventanas abiertas. ¿Cómo voy a dejar yo las ventanas abiertas con este clima tan fuerte, tanta nieve, tanto frío? Pues la casa se fría toda. Me echa la culpa el dueño de la casa. Yo no puedo hacer eso. Y la máquina, el boiler se apaga porque si entra mucho frío por las ventanas, pues el boiler se apaga y me echan la responsabilidad.
Okay, this person has asked me to open the windows to do the investigation, which I can do because it's expensive and the owner building is going to complain about me having the windows open.
Ella me decía eso y entró varias veces en las visitas que nos ha hecho a la casa con esa misma persona que después se entraron y me hicieron ese robo entrando por la ventana del basement. Yo puse en conocimiento a la policía cercana en la avenida Central con 19. Había de directora o jefe una mujer, no me acuerdo el nombre en este momento, una mujer policía joven. Ellos fueron a la casa, no sé qué, hablaron con los ladrones y después salieron convencidos y no hicieron nada. Yo tengo el récord, hasta hoy día no se ha investigado, se quedó eso impune. No hay confianza en la policía de Norris. Yo después continué poniendo en conocimiento con otros policías y yo llegaba y ellos entraban en otro cuarto y se ponían a reírse.
Basically, he's just describing all the conflict that he's been having with this investigation. His main complaint is that nothing has been done since 2014.
Quiero pedir con todo el respeto a ustedes, señores concejales de esta ciudad, que se abra investigación rigurosa y pueda que me restituya los bienes que me robaron, mis documentos de identificación, porque soy ciudadano americano y en todas las elecciones yo participo y en mi país también participaba, con ser que soy de un país que hemos tenido mucha violencia, pero hemos respetado y hemos acudido a los actos democráticos como es una elección. Pido una ayuda para que se investigue este caso de acuerdo a la ley y sean sancionados los agentes oficiales de la policía que no me quisieron atender y se burlaban. Yo iba muchas veces a poner en conocimiento y hablar con ellos, no me atendían, se ponían a reírse y se entraban, y la misma directora y otro señor agente de policía de apellido Rodríguez, que hablaba español, no me quiso atender.
He just wants a solution to this issue, that the investigation is complete, that he can get his stuff back, and also complain against police, because even though the official spoke Spanish, he didn't really feel like he was addressing his problem. That's all. Thank you.
Esta es mi queja que pongo en conocimiento de ustedes también y también la puse por escrito en una oficina de aquí mismo, de este edificio, me parece que en el tercer piso, no recuerdo en este momento el número, pero solicité una investigación contra la mujer jefe de la policía de ese puesto y también contra los otros policías, y solicito una rigurosa investigación y sanción. Muchas gracias por atenderme. Thank you very much. Thank you.
He also wanted to add that he filed a complaint, and he's continuing that, and he thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right, I will ask one last time, is there, or I guess 3 more times, is there anyone else who is here to speak on this? Anyone else? Anyone? Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I officially close this public hearing. Before I'm going to, and thank you, Mayor. We want to say hello to Mayor Jacob Fry. Thank you for joining us. Before I pass it over to the mayor, I wanted to check in about something because I have some concerns about the numbers that have been discussed. Typically, if Director Corbel was here, I would ask her directly. But I believe that we have a couple of folks here from the compliance and director who can speak to this, or are you able to speak to this, the two of you? Because I'm just concerned about this data, so I just would like to get some clarification and context for it.
Good afternoon, Chair Cunningham, Council Vice President Jenkins, council members. My name is Imani Jafar, and the mayor as well. I am the director of the Office of Police Conduct Review, so I can address the numbers for you specifically. As you know, the Office of Police Conduct Review was created in 2012 due to a state law change that made the Civilian Review Authority unable to continue functioning in it's form. However, my understanding of the history is that there was actually no discipline coming out of the Civilian Review Authority for 3 years prior to that. So,
If you could please be respectful of the current speaker.
thank you, appreciate it. So the discipline numbers I'm going to give you now are more than 10 years of the Civilian Review Authority. I think many of you know this because you've asked specifically, but our numbers are live on our website, on our data portal in real time. So you can always double check those numbers. But I have the current numbers right now in terms of discipline. 22 letters of reprimand have been issued, 22 suspensions have been issued, 4 terminations, 1 demotion. And although it is not considered discipline, there is a mechanism called coaching where officers can be sent to their supervisor for a formal document to be written up that's actually sent back to the joint supervisors, which is myself and the Commander of Internal Affairs for review. 172 of those have been issued, and my office did recent research and study work that included that the rate of recidivism after being sent to coaching is very, very low. So that's the current numbers right now. Do you have any questions or other information you want from me about the office?
Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair and Mr. Parr. What is the time frame for the numbers that you just cited?
So this is 2012 through the current.
Thank you.
One question that I'll, and then we can wrap it up here, but can you explain to me if I have a complaint and I show up and file that complaint, can you explain to me what the next steps look like and how accountability fits into that?
Absolutely. So when a complaint is filed, most of the complaints actually come to our office from online. The first step in screening that process is a civilian investigator who then prepares the complaint along with any of the initial documents to be reviewed by myself and the Commander of Internal Affairs. Then from that point, and this information is all on our website, you can actually see how we decision make. The numbers are there and available to the public, along with fact sheets about our office with that process. So there's a number of paths that can go if a case continues going along that route. Cases that go through investigation ultimately hit a review panel that's a mix of sworn officers, lieutenants, and civilians that are appointed by the city council and the mayor. So you have civilians layered throughout the process. There's also the Police Conduct Oversight Commission that tackles higher level policy issues. Their research and studies are well known, not only within the city, but nationwide, to kind of address the bigger issues. And we are support staff for that commission because they are volunteers.
Are there any questions? Thank you so much for that clarification. I just wanted to be able to get it better in context. So thank you very much.
If I could so clarify,
The public hearing is actually closed now. The public hearing is actually closed now. But the public hearing is actually closed now.
filed by civilians, members of the community, as opposed to internal affairs complaints. She is talking about a combination of both. And so
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Fry so that he has something to say.
Chair Cunningham, thank you so much for the opportunity. Members of the committee, I do appreciate the ability to speak here in support of our Civil Rights Director, Ms. Corbel. I actually had the experience of being involved with cases prior to Ms. Corbel's involvement, and I can say that the backlog was significant. There was a backlog in the form of multiple hundred cases, and what that backlog led to was the inability to get cases resolved in a timely fashion. And although there are treble damages, in other words, 3 times the amount of damages that you can get through our Minneapolis Civil Rights Department as a plaintiff, it was the case that most attorneys would not take cases through the Civil Rights Department because it would quite simply take too long. Individuals needed to receive the necessary damages, and they were not receiving those damages because of the backlog. And what I know is that Ms. Corbel has dramatically reduced that backlog, thus allowing the Civil Rights Department to function properly. That is no small feat. I'll also note that Ms. Corbel has not only essentially eliminated the backlog, but has also spearheaded the enforcement of our earned sick and safe time and minimum wage ordinances. Since Minneapolis's first in the state paid sick leave ordinance took effect in July, Corbel's Civil Rights Department has cited more than 60 employers in violation of the ordinance and negotiated settlements and payments to workers who were wrongfully denied paid sick leave. The department is also charged with enforcing the city's new minimum wage ordinance, which took effect in January. Corbel was also the founder of the city's Urban Scholars Program, an internship program that provides students from diverse cultural backgrounds with professional experience in state and local government. And the quality of the body of her work, I think, reflects the high caliber of her leadership. I will note that I was someone who did not vote in favor of Ms. Corbel 4 years ago due to a concern about interaction with employees. However, there was some training that took place, and if you look at the sheer numbers, whether those numbers were alleged or proven, they dropped dramatically. So I think if you look at the full body of Ms. Corbel's work, it is worth reappointment, and I do ask for your support. Thank you.
All right, now I'm going to open it up to council members for questions. I see Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments that we heard today. I also note that Ms. Corbel isn't here, and I also acknowledge that there was a lot of snow out today, and then we heard comments about people who weren't able to make it because of this. I'm sensitive to that, and I would be open to the idea of continuing it to let us get some more questions answered, maybe do some more research. And we heard some kind of disturbing allegations and give an opportunity for more people to give input if we wanted to. Won't make the motion there, but I wanted to throw it out to the committee members to see if that was something people are open to, or if you are pressed to just move forward and get this done. And if you want, I could put it in a motion and we could vote on it too, but I'm happy to start some discussion on it too.
Do you want to make a motion?
Seeing no one eager to weigh in, sure, I'll move that we table this for one cycle, keep it in committee.
All right, and now I open up to discussion from there. All right, I would like to open it up to discussion for the other council members to weigh in on. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham and Councilmember Gordon for your motion. You know, we've heard a lot of testimony regarding the performance of Director Corbel. Some of it seems to be conflated with police misconduct. I have worked in City Hall for a number of years and worked with a number of civil rights directors in the past, none of which have been able to really professionalize the Office of Civil Rights in the way that Director Corbel has been able to do in her tenure. And while I am very inclined to support her reappointment, I do believe that an opportunity for more comment would be in order.
All right, thank you. I would like to add that I do not support this particular motion because there are lots of other ways to be able to give comment besides showing up. There are lots of other ways you can contact, sending an email, you can submit it through the website, you can call your council members. There are lots of ways to be able to make sure that your voice is heard in our system as is. And we have council members who are available. And so I will not be in support of this because there have been opportunities and lots of ways to engage besides being here. There's lots of folks who actually cannot make it to any public hearing because of work or because they can't find childcare. And so that's why we have different routes to be able to make sure that our voice is heard and that it's accessible to folks in other ways. Councilmember Schrader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While I agree with many of the points that Vice President Jenkins said, I also agree with you, Mr. Chair. There's other ways that folks can give input. I did want to ask the clerk if what would, now I'll revise that. No, I think that there's been a lot of time, and I think that I'd like to see this go forward.
All right, seeing no further discussion on this motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize for chiming in yet again. Mr. Chair, I agree with your sentiment. Ms. Corbel has been through not just a little bit of public testimony, but perhaps more public testimony than I've seen any appointee go through, maybe with the exception of our city attorney. This is an issue that has played itself out in the media, in the newspaper for several months now. The public hearing and testimony and input has come not just in the form of this committee meeting today. It's come through email, it's come through phone calls, it's come through newspaper articles. I think we've been as transparent as possible, and Ms. Amani Jafar, I think, articulately stated the proposed, exactly where the statistics are at. So, I mean, I believe that the public has been substantially involved, and I would ask that we not put Ms. Corbel through any more undue burden, and that we move today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Seeing no further comments from my colleagues, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no, no. The motion does not carry because there is not a majority. So now moving back, are there any other comments on the reappointment as is? Right, I would like to go ahead and jump in here as a council member who is all in this city. Mr. Turek, this is not the time for you to come back up here and speak. No, sorry, I meant for council members. Okay. All right, thank you very much. So I would like to be able to share that as a council member who is all in for building strong civil rights in our city, I am speaking in favor of this reappointment. Since being sworn in as a council member, I have been working very closely with the Civil Rights Department on multiple fronts. I've been working with them on supplier diversity and closing disparities in city procurement. I've been working with them on labor standards enforcement of sick and safe time and minimum wage ordinances. And an issue that's of particular interest of me is weeding out violent officers from MPD. The system itself is for police accountability is fundamentally flawed and requires restructuring, which is why I publicly stepped into this work. I have done my due diligence to dive into the concerns brought up by residents, including someone from my ward, because I wanted to be as informed as possible about what I support as a policymaker. First, the process of major systemic change doesn't like going from the Civilian Review Authority to the PCOC does not happen in a vacuum with a single person. The state legislation in 2012 stripped civilian review authorities from any disciplinary power, giving the power to hold officers accountable solely to the police chief. This systemic change was initiated. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Please sit down. So that is not true. So please do not interrupt me, sir. Please have a seat. Order. It is state legislation that passed in 2012 that makes it only solely accountable to the police chief. Please excuse me. This is the public hearing was closed and now we are continuing forward. The PCOC was a compromise that has led to a national model in which other cities' civilian review authorities come to study because it has such a high success rate. As a former behavioral analyst, I support coaching as a path for very low offenses because coaching with a dedicated supervisor that holds an officer accountable over a long period of time is far more effective in sustainably changing behavior than going immediately to punitive measures. Here is what I am fighting for as council member. In addition to maintaining an effective police conduct oversight commission is either a more aggressive partner in the city attorney's office or a civil rights department's own attorney because it's hard for the city to sue itself. The second is a stronger action by the police chief and stronger mayoral supervision of the police chief. The third is taking on the union, particularly during contract negotiations. And the fourth is less bias in the criminal justice system. So I wanted to name those things because it's all interconnected. It's not a single person. And as somebody who's passionate about this particular body of work, I hear all of you. What has happened with the police is not okay. It's not okay. And so that's a piece of the work that I am committed to, and I believe that Velma Corbel is the right person to continue that work forward. And I look to the mayor to also hold her accountable as his employee and appointee as well. Seeing no further comments okay, Councilmember Gordon.
I just wanted to make a comment, and it's maybe a slight sidebar. I think looking back on however the civil rights has done or has not done and what they have done or haven't done in the past 4 years in particular, but even longer, is as much the responsibility as the city council as it is anybody. I think in the last term, this committee didn't do a good job of providing oversight. I feel hopeful that we have a chair who seems passionate about lifting up this department, advocating for it, getting its needs met, and helping to hold it accountable. So that actually gives me some hope here, and I'm committed to rolling up my sleeves with you, even though I may see different reforms that might need to happen with our police conduct oversight and how we do that, and we'll be pushing it in different ways. I think there's opportunities here to open up ordinances and to look at budgets and see how we can help this department perform better, and as well as directing the director, assuming it's going to be Ms. Corbel at this point, the way the discussion up here is going with policymakers. So I thank you for giving this so much thought and so much interest and so much time. It's a key part of this committee's work, and I think we have a responsibility and should be held accountable in the future if we don't make more progress.
Thank you, Councilmember Gordon. Any other final comments? All right, seeing no comments or questions, I move the approval of the reappointment by the Executive Committee of Velma Corbel to the appointed position of Director of Civil Rights for a two-year term beginning January 2nd. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and that item is approved. Our first discussion item is receiving and filing a presentation summarizing the discussion and feedback by the Clean Energy Partnership regarding the 100% renewable electricity resolution. Luke Hollenkamp, in the City Coordinator's Office of Sustainability, along with Abby Finnis, co-chair of the Energy Vision Advisory Committee, will begin the presentation. This will be followed by a presentation from members of I Matter, a student-led climate change collaborative, and then a discussion on a resolution establishing a 100% renewable electricity goal for Minneapolis. Mr. Hollenkamp.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, the chamber is having some technical difficulties with the display equipment, and it would be really good for the staff. I apologize for this, but if we could take a small recess, maybe 5 minutes. We have to reset the presentation program.
Oh, that's no problem at all. All right. So I would like to make a motion to take a 5-minute recess. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
I think maybe Grant signed in on this as his own self. So can
It's no longer. They think they may have swapped. Yeah, that's what, yeah. You know. Hey. I'm not. They use my. Oh no. I'd like to zero out. Yeah, we did that wrong. Hey, to see you back.
out of jail so much for getting kicked out of here one day for jumping up and yelling something. I said, I ran through about
Going to be reconvening this meeting, so if you will please take your seats so that we can hear this wonderful, informative, exciting presentation. Yes, ma'am. All right, so take two. Mr. Hollenkamp, the floor is yours.
Cunningham and council members, I'll try to keep my my comments pretty brief here. I know there's a few more folks still to talk and present today. I'm here to talk about the 100% renewable electricity resolution being proposed today and focus on the summary of the Clean Energy Partnership feedback. The resolution was introduced to council in the fall of 2017, and when it was introduced after being heard, staff direction was issued to our office, the Division of Sustainability, to prepare and present formal agenda items at the Clean Energy Partnership Board and EVAC meetings. And we have three board members here with us today, Councilmember Gordon, Councilmember Schrader, and Councilmember Fletcher. To start off the engagement, the Clean Energy Partnership Planning Team, which is made of city staff, city council member and mayoral aides, as well as then members of Xcel Energy and Centerpoint Energy, met with interested EVAC members on January 16th, and then had a official agenda item at the full EVAC meeting in early February, and that was their Q1 meeting of this year. To summarize some of the primary feedback from EVAC, they had a list of approximately 9 or 10 items that they wanted to see out of the resolution, and this is a prior draft than what you are seeing today. But some of their feedback said explicitly define what 100% renewable electricity means, what resources would be counted towards that, determine what impact should be prioritized while meeting 100% renewable electricity resolution. Sometimes there can be competing goals. So provide some determination of what should be prioritized. A determination of how Xcel Energy's planned portfolio is considered part of that goal. Essentially, how much or should Xcel Energy's percentage of renewable energy that's already being supplied to customers, should that be considered part of the goal? And including more specific metrics related to the impacts of the resolution, whether they're direct impacts or indirect impacts, and also how subsequent planning could address those as well. EVAC would express a desire to see that the resolution aligned with the Climate Action Plan, which was already been adopted a number of years ago, as well as the city's energy vision, and any other related plans or policies that the City Council has passed. They also asked that there be a consideration of removing mentions of technologies that do not directly impact electricity usage. There was a few references to natural gas conservation technologies in that. They also asked that the document be made shorter and more streamlined. I believe the previous resolution was 6 pages or so, so they asked for that to be a little bit shorter. They also asked the document focus on setting goals and how an implementation plan or next steps would really be developed after a resolution would be adopted. And they also had a long discussion on balancing ambition and against realistic goal setting. So years that should be used for setting targets, as well as percentage targets along the way. This feedback in whole was then presented to the Clean Energy Partnership Board at their Q1 board meeting in mid-March. And at that time, Councilmember Gordon presented also an overview of the updated resolution, which had incorporated all of those items of feedback from EVAC at that time. Mayor Fry, who was involved with the resolution last year as then a council member, acknowledged and thanked, again, Councilmember Gordon, Schrader, and Fletcher for their work on the resolution, as well as then the mayor's policy aide, Heidi Ritchie, who has been very involved since last fall as well. And Xcel Energy at the Clean Energy Partnership Board was mentioned that they were very excited to work with the city going forward on this goal. Obviously, they've made great strides in increasing renewable energy and are looking forward to having those discussions with the city as we push them to add even more renewables on top of their current plants. And I also wanted to add in a little bit of extra feedback from the Community Environmental Advisory Commission. They were first engaged in fall of 2017, so many months ago. But since then, they were re-engaged at their March meeting so that they got an updated presentation on the current state of the resolution, and they were able to provide their feedback as well on the current draft. They wrote a letter to city council members that I believe you all have received last week, April 11th, in support of the resolution, and they also then called for an increase in resources to be dedicated specifically towards this resolution and making its goals possible, and then determining the pathway to get to those goals. And with that, I am happy to take any of your questions, and if there's any technical questions, I also have some supplemental slides I can refer to either now or during any of the other presentations.
All right, any questions thus far? All right, so then thank you, Mr. Hollenkamp.
Thank you.
So now we'll move on to our presentation from the iMatter group. Welcome Ethan Feldman, Jordan Kaplan, Sophia Fax, and Sophia Manolis. We ask everyone who speaks to please state your name, and I apologize if I said your name wrong. Please come forward.
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the council members so much for having us here. My name is Ethan Feldman, and I'm a senior at Southwest High School. I'm passionate about climate change as I'm concerned with the destabilizing threat it poses at home and abroad. I'm speaking today on behalf of high schoolers from Southwest, Washburn, Roosevelt, Patrick Henry, and South High Schools. We're all different people from different places in this city, but we're united by a common belief that climate change is an urgent threat to our world and well-being, and that the city must address it and amplify the voices of those who are most affected by it. We applaud the city's efforts on this resolution that you all are currently discussing, and the following things that we're going to speak about were our suggested improvements on this resolution, as well as the vision that our group, and we hope other youth in this city, will take on to help make the city more efficient and have a more green Minneapolis. So we've worked with iMatter, which is a national organization which helps connect youth like us who are doing advocacy efforts with the necessary resources. And with these resources, we started a petition that received over 1,000 signatures from Southwest and South students alone. We consulted with experts from the Great Plains Institute, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, ILSR, as well as with Mr. Hollenkamp, who just spoke from the city's sustainability office. As well as we've met with organizations like the Sierra Club, as well as with Mayor Fry and council members Cunningham, Johnson, Schrader, Gordon, Reich, and Fletcher. And we've received endorsements as well from politicians such as Paul Thiessen, Ilhan Omar, and Jeremiah Ellison, as well as with numerous environmental and neighborhood organizations that we've gone out and spoken to as part of the public relations part of this effort, and letting people know in the city about the current developments that are happening with regards to this resolution. And so our presentation that follows is going to be divided into 3 parts for the 3 goals that we proposed to add to this resolution, as well as what we'll continue to advocate for at this level. So the first is to have 100% renewable electricity by the year 2025. The second is to have 25% of this electricity or corridor generated within the city's boundaries. And the third is to have 2 voting seats for youth on SEAC, which is the city's environmental commission. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Britta Pearson. I am a junior at Henry High School. As a young child, my family frequently went camping in Minnesota's great outdoors. We spent time hiking and canoeing as a family. These are the moments where I made some of my fondest memories. As a 7th grader, I had the opportunity to go on a school field trip to the Boundary Waters. Looking back, not only was seeing such a great expanse of unchanged nature amazing, but seeing how awestruck first-time campers were. This was their first time being exposed to Minnesota's full beauty and had an everlasting effect on them. These natural beauties are becoming the victim to our actions as humans. I want not only our children to have the opportunity to explore Minnesota's clean outdoors, but also every young person in future generations. If we don't take action, while we still can. Our children and their children won't have this, and it will be because we didn't take the necessary steps in order to preserve what was around us. This is why I hold the issue of climate change near and dear to my heart. Today I'm speaking about a request to create 2 voting seats on SEAC that would be reserved for qualified Minneapolis high schoolers. Currently, youth have very little formal civic power, even with issues that concern us. Until we turn 18, we are unable to vote. We have no official voice in our political system, particularly with the issue of climate change, where us youth will have to deal with the consequences the longest. This makes little sense. We deserve to have a role in deciding how Minneapolis will take action in combating climate change, and having 2 seats on this committee can help give us a platform to do so. Having these seats would give us a foot in the door in terms of influencing Minneapolis's environmental policy. Instead of working outside the system, which we found to be difficult at times and often leaves us out of the loop, we be involved with decisions as they're made. In addition, the seats can help get youth involved in the local government. Instead of feeling voiceless and disconnected, youth will see actual change brought about by their peers. These seats can serve to represent young people's voices on the issues of climate change and serve as a platform for introducing ideas about how to better protect our environment. These seats are not only benefiting us in terms of giving us a voice, but also you. You are receiving more community engagement, for we have already received endorsements from 14 neighborhood associations. It is essential that these seats are voting seats. Youth deserve more than just a token role in the committee. In other cities, youth already have a formalized role in municipal climate action. In Halifax, a youth advisory council was created that gives young people a clear way to be involved in dealing with environmental policy. Looking closer to Minneapolis, St. Louis Parks Environment Sustainability Commission has 2 voting seats reserved for youth. 2 voting seats on SEAC is not too much to ask for Minneapolis high schoolers. To recap, our specific ask is to create 2 voting seats on SEAC, which would expand the committee from 19 to 21 members. That will be reserved for Minneapolis residents who are in high school, meaning they don't have to be a student in Minneapolis public schools, just a Minneapolis resident. Qualified means that they would have to go through an application process as any other candidate would. As the biggest stakeholder in our environment's future, we know it is very important for youth to be involved in working against climate change. These 2 seats are a great first step in achieving that goal. Thank you for considering this proposal.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Jobin, and I'm an environmental science student at the University of Minnesota. I recently got involved with iMatter and have been collecting signatures from students and different groups and clubs at the university to show support and representation from the university for this group. One of our main proposals is for the city to set a goal for producing 25% of its renewable electricity from local sources by 2030. We understand that this is a very ambitious goal, but we have done our research, and everything we've found has suggested that the 25 benchmark is absolutely possible for Minneapolis. We've talked to energy experts who have been optimistic about this goal. Abby Finnis of the Great Plains Institute steered us in the direction of a solar energy calculator that was used by the Minneapolis Metropolitan Council. We looked through their data and found our number of 25% was in line with their projections. While our goal is challenging, it is achievable. The rationale for this goal is simple. Much of Minneapolis's renewable energy comes from credits purchased from Xcel, meaning that Minneapolis doesn't actually produce much of our own renewable electricity. These credits don't diminish our city's carbon footprint and lack the resilience that local electricity would provide. Additionally, investing in local sources of electricity ensures that the money stays within the city. This can benefit the local economy and be a way for the city to get a part of the fast-growing renewable energy industry. Equity is often alluded to in resolutions concerned with the environment, but often with little emphasis on follow-through. By keeping resources and production within city limits, this goal would allow for the citizens to more equitably generate and distribute our electricity amongst our most needy citizens. It is our understanding that Minneapolis has been sliding a bit in our development of local electricity, and at this critical juncture, we must reverse the momentum by adopting this feasible and aggressive measure. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophia Fox, and I'm a senior at South High School. Since before I can remember, I've loved animals. I would pet every dog I could. There's pictures of me sitting on my cousin's cows, and the first time I got to ride a horse, I was so excited I could hardly say I wanted to ride the horse. When I was young, I was bullied pretty badly, but animals were always there for me. I could watch the birds and squirrels at home, and at my grandma's, I could watch the foxes, deer, beavers, otters, and so many more. If you've never watched a wild animal and had them look back at you, square in the eye, you are missing out because it's a connection unlike any other. So when you love animals as much as I do, you also love nature because that's where you can find the animals. And this is why climate change matters so much to me. Because unfortunately, when we destroy the environment, we don't just hurt ourselves, we hurt every other living thing on the planet. Chief Seattle is credited with saying, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children." And I'd like to add to that, because we're not just borrowing it from our children, we're borrowing it from all of the children of all of the estimated 8.7 million species we share this planet with. And we are here to say the loan is due. My generation isn't the only one that cares. As head of the Outreach Committee, I've been in charge of reaching out to businesses and organizations and neighborhood associations. I've contacted all 70 of them, and right now we have 15 endorsements. We are also in contact with an additional 14 and working on getting endorsements from them. It's been an extremely broadening experience being able to see and be involved with government at such a grassroots level. The support from so many of them has been so uplifting and empowering. Just last week, I was able to speak at the Whittier Neighborhood Association, which was especially amazing because there were so many community members there who were so supportive and encouraging. They were thrilled to hear not only about the work we're doing and further enforced what I already knew. This is an issue not only incredibly important to me, my peers, and my generation, but to older generations as well. So with this in mind, I'd like to talk about our final goal, that Minneapolis commit community-wide to run on 100% renewable electricity by the year 2025. Clean electricity is the foundation of a carbon-free society because it's the first step that allows us to transition our transportation and heating infrastructures away from fossil fuels. It's a vital step towards a sustainable future. We've done research, consulted with experts from the city, the Great Plains Institute, and the Institute for Self-Reliance, as well as others. The net of that is, while our goal is challenging, it is possible, but more importantly, aggressive goals and then effective implementation are necessary to avoid the consequences of climate change that will affect us the most. While we're heartened and very supportive of the work on Draft 1314, which calls for renewable electricity by 2030, we want to remain involved and use it as a stepping stone for further action. Minneapolis cannot just be a participant in the fight against climate change. We must be a leader, if not for your sake, for the sake of your children, for your grandchildren, for my generation, and for everyone we share this planet with. And because it can be hard to visualize what a generation looks like, Amelia is in the class of 2025, and she wants to speak to you about why climate change is important to her.
I'm Amelia from the class of 2025. Minneapolis committing to 100% renewable electricity is important to me because it helps towards stopping global climate change, which is something that should be stopped in order to protect the Earth, the planet we live on. Global climate change is warming polar bears' habitats, which, if it gets much worse, could eventually melt their habitat and the polar bears would go extinct. Animals going extinct is a very bad thing, and it makes me feel uneasy. I don't think it's fair that I and other kids my age and the kids born after me won't get to see other animals, some animals we might have wanted to see.
All right, thank you. Is that all for your presentation? All right, council members, do you have any questions for the iMatter group? Well, I will go ahead and say that I am very, very excited that you are here. A little extra more excited for the Patrick Henry. But no, I'm so happy that you all are here. Thank you so much for getting involved. We don't have a youth inclusive democracy. Much like you said, you have to be 18 to vote. And so I really appreciate you being here, having talked to so many council members, myself included. You've done a lot of research, you're pushing, and I'm really grateful for that. So I hope that this is just the first time that we'll be seeing all of you here. Get more young folks involved, because with your help, then we'll be able to finally get that push to make the change happen. So thank you very, very much. And thank you for that presentation. All right, now we'll move on to the final piece of this item, the resolution establishing a 100% renewable energy goal for Minneapolis. Council members Fletcher, Schrader, and Gordon are the authors and will speak to this resolution. Go ahead and pass it along.
Did you want us to read the resolution at this point, or?
You can read the resolution at this time.
Okay. And then maybe I can speak to it.
Yeah.
A little bit later. Yeah, that would be wonderful. And I do really want to thank all the people who put effort into this, and the comments from iMatter I take very seriously. Even though there are still a few spots where we don't quite hit the target you're trying to get us to, doesn't mean we can't get there anyway or get there later. So I'll read believe it or not, this is the shortened version. It was twice as long before, so settle in. Whereas there is overwhelming scientific consensus that climate change is a real and major threat to human civilization and is caused primarily by the combustion of fossil fuels. And whereas the greatest burden resulting from an inadequate response to the climate crisis will be borne by young people, future generations, and the poorest and most vulnerable communities around the globe. And whereas on June 28, 2013, Minneapolis adopted a climate action plan which seeks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 15% by 2015, 30% by 2025, and 80% by 2050, all from our 2006 baseline. And whereas the Climate Action Plan further commits the city to increase electricity from local and directly purchased renewables to 10% of the total consumed by 2025, and whereas the percentage of Minneapolis community-wide electricity use from local and directly purchased renewable energy has declined in recent years, and whereas Minneapolis has adopted an energy vision that states, in 2040, Minneapolis's energy system will provide reliable, affordable, local, and clean energy services for Minneapolis homes, businesses, and institutions, sustaining the city's economy and environment and contributing to a more socially just community. And whereas the collaboration between Minneapolis sustainability staff and the Siemens City Performance Tool shows that, quote, it is possible for Minneapolis to achieve its 80 by 50 target if the city, its utilities, and its inhabitants work aggressively to clean the local energy supply, among other measures. And
whereas the cost of wind and solar energy is rapidly falling and the number of alternatives approaches there are a number of alternative approaches like community solar are making renewable energy easier to access. And whereas the purpose of this resolution, renewable electricity includes electricity derived from wind, solar, geothermal, and wave technology sources, and may include low impact, small hydro, and some form of biomass after these projects are evaluated for the sustainability and environmental justice implications, but specifically excludes electricity derived from fossil fuels, nuclear, incineration of non-biogenic municipal and medical waste, and large-scale future hydroelectric developments. And whereas the renewable energy economy presents opportunities for workers in manufacturing, construction, and service sectors, it is essential that workers play a role in helping drive innovation towards a greener energy economy while creating and maintaining family-sustaining jobs. And whereas this energy transition is an opportunity to build equity among communities of color and indigenous communities that have been underrepresented in the energy field and marketplace, and the city of Minneapolis is committed to making the most of this opportunity. And whereas the financial and environmental benefits of renewable energy must be shared equitably across all economic and racial groups, and whereas the city of Minneapolis is committed to ensuring that all residents and all businesses, no matter their race, income, wealth, or credit history, can access and benefit renewable energy and electrical efficiency through processes such as community solar and inclusive financing, and whereas on April 28th, 2017, Minneapolis approved the establishment of 2 green zones aimed at improving health and supporting economic development using environmentally conscious efforts in communities that face the cumulative effects of environmental pollution, as well as social, political, and environmental economic vulnerability. And
whereas there are significant social costs caused by the use of fossil fuels, including health impacts to our communities through adverse effects on air quality and the uncertain long-term negative effects of climate change, and whereas there is demonstrated potential to leverage significant investment in renewable energy and energy efficiency through the Health Department's Green Business Housing Cost Share Program, and whereas the City Council has received a report from Finance and Property Services staff, Blueprint for Powering Minneapolis Municipal Operations with 100% Renewable Electricity by 2022, and whereas Minneapolis, Xcel Energy, and CenterPoint Energy have entered into the Minneapolis Clean Energy Partnership with goals of making utility customers more energy efficient, expanding access to and use of clean and renewable energy, increasing the effective collaboration between the City of Minneapolis, Xcel Energy, and CenterPoint Energy to address energy and climate-related issues, and pursuing collaboration in a way that advances equity and other environmental benefits. And whereas Xcel Energy's projected 2021 fuel mix for the upper Midwest includes 30% wind and 10% other renewables, resulting from a strategy of increasing the use of wind and solar power and offering customers additional renewable and energy-saving options. And whereas the City of Minneapolis is committed to meeting its renewable electricity goals with as little reliance on purchasing renewable energy credits on the open market as possible, and will give goal preference and credit for resources exhibiting additionality regardless of renewable energy credit ownership, such as community solar gardens and local solar installations. And whereas Minneapolis recently agreed to acquire 17.8 million kilowatt hours annually, nearly 18% of annual city enterprise electricity usage, of renewable electricity from Xcel Energy's Renewable Connect program for municipal operations as a bridge to 100% renewable electricity use. And
whereas Xcel Energy's current and future renewable electricity generation mix will be counted towards municipal and community-wide goals with support from the city in its efforts to transition to renewable energy throughout its service territory. And whereas Minneapolis and Xcel Energy have begun work on the concept of a city-owned renewable energy facility, which could serve both enterprise and community-wide energy needs. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City of Minneapolis through its City Council that Minneapolis reaffirms and formally adopts a goal of reaching 100% renewable electricity for municipal facilities and operations by 2022. Finance and Property Services staff are directed to bring forward an annual report on the city's progress towards implementing the adopted blueprint for powering Minneapolis municipal operations with 100% renewable electricity by 2022. Be it further resolved that as a strategy to meet its aggressive adopted carbon emission reduction and climate change goals and move away from fossil fuels in all sectors of the energy economy, Minneapolis adopts a goal of getting 100% of community-wide electricity use from renewable sources by 2030 and directs the City Coordinator's Office to bring forward a blueprint by the first quarter of 2019 for reaching this goal. The blueprint shall identify the following: the impact of this goal on already adopted climate policy, including the adopted carbon emission reduction goals of 80% by 2050, and the strategies identified in the adopted climate action plan, including the goal of reaching 10% local renewable generated electricity by 2025, energy pathways study, and city performance tool study, and ways in which this blueprint may support and/or require an update to the adopted climate action plan.
Potential policies and programs that the city will need to implement in order to achieve this goal, and a prioritization of these policies and programs. The financial resources necessary to create this blueprint and implement these policies and programs, suggested sources for these revenues, projected leverage of external resources, timelines, milestones, and metrics for reaching this goal, the community outreach and engagement necessary to reach this goal, including the ongoing inclusion of young people in the process, necessary regulatory reforms at the Public Utilities Commission and in the state in Minnesota statute, energy efficiency strategies that could help meet this goal by reducing the overall amount of electricity being consumed, the ways that implementing this goal might impact the necessary transition away from fossil fuels across all sectors of the energy economy, including building, heating, and cooling, and transportation, which may increase electricity usage even as energy efficiency increases.
Strategies to ensure that all consumers, especially those who have been left out of the benefits of energy programs in the past, communities of color, low-income communities, renters, and communities that have borne the brunt of past environmental racism, receive equitable benefit from this transition. Strategies that the city can employ to facilitate training and hiring people from within communities of color and women who have traditionally been underrepresented in the energy economy, and targets for labor participation from these demographic groups. The ways in which implementing this goal can improve individual and community-wide health outcomes, the ways in which this energy transition can increase the resilience of our communities and save Minneapolis residents and businesses from increasing energy costs, specific strategies to be implemented in the adopted green zones, the role of the Clean Energy Partnership in reaching this goal. Be it further resolved that the city opposes the rollback of climate policy at the federal level and reaffirms its ongoing commitment to the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement.
All right, thank you. Do committee members have any questions? Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham. And I don't necessarily have questions regarding the resolution. I agree with everything that is stated in the resolution. I do want to just acknowledge and thank the young people for stepping up and being willing to be a part of this process and be engaged in committees that advise the city on energy policies and hopefully on other issues as well. And just want to really encourage you guys to think deeply and intersectionally about how do we engage other youth, young people, particularly young people of color in these conversations. You know, the last couple of whereases in the resolution talked about environmental injustices and environmental racism that deeply impacts communities of color. And so I would really hope that, you know, we can depend on you guys to help us engage young people of color to be involved in these issues as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And speaking really to that, we know that certain parts of the city have been disproportionately harmed historically. And so making sure that we are engaging young folks in those green zones in particular, as well as some of North Minneapolis isn't in that as well, but just making sure geographically that we have those sort of representations as well is really important. Well, seeing no further questions. Oh, I'm sorry. I do see a further question. Councilmember Gordon.
Well, so this is really a comment, and I would like to move the resolution and speak to it. So consider it moved. And I just want to say that it's refreshing for me to actually have somebody come back and say, could you please stretch your goals for renewable energy higher? I've been on the council a long time, and a lot of it is me trying to pull people and say, I think we could do a little bit better. Could we please do a little bit better and be a little more aspirational? So this is just so hopeful. And it's also a little bit disconcerting to realize maybe we're not reaching far enough, fast enough to get there quickly. With that said, part of the reason why we want to get renewable electricity is to address the pressure on the climate and to diminish the use of fossil fuels. And so I know we're calling for renewable electricity, but I want people to also remember when we're trying to change climate, we're dealing also with transportation and gasoline and also natural gas and heating our homes. And it's not going to be easy to reach these goals. Not only the renewable energy goal, it's going to be a lot of work now. I really appreciate the effort that went into this resolution, and I have to acknowledge my policy aide, Robin Garwood, who put a lot of work into this, as well as Heidi Ritchie from Garwood, and also the staff of other council members who co-authored this. I know it was actually a lot of work since you guys first got elected. And then also a little tip of the hat to the mayor for initiating this when he was on the city council running for mayor last year. But with that long list of things we were reading that should go into that that blueprint, we called it, or the plan for actually accomplishing this, is really important that we're approving those too, because that's going to tell us these are pieces and ingredients we need so we can really get there. But we're also going to need a lot of community pressure and a lot of community involvement to get there. And now I also want to make a little bit of an excuse. I want you to be aware of one of the reasons why getting to such a high percentage might be complicated, especially if things are moving in the right direction. If things are moving in the right direction, we won't be burning so much gasoline in our transportation system, and we won't be burning so much natural gas to heat our buildings. We might get more of that from electricity. So what that means is the demand to produce more electricity is going to be going up, and that's good. But that will mean it'll be harder to get all that new electricity also from the renewable. And to get people to make that change and to think they can afford to do that. So this is going to be a complicated journey we're going to go on in the next 10, 20, 30 years to make this big energy transition. And I'd say if we come back and look at this again in a few years and realize we're making such dramatic process, we can adjust our goals and we can move move forward and get there sooner, and even adjust some of our goals to say, let's do more of that, finding our renewable energy in the city of Minneapolis. I think that's a potential challenge too, and I think it's really important. We're not necessarily distracted by just trying to do that where it's really going to be hard. Even one of our biggest resources that we have is our water plant, which guess where our water plant is located, where it's got a lot of sun exposure, it's got a lot of space and a lot of room, and we own it. It's in Fridley. So even when we put in that installation, it's not going to help us get to our 10% or 25% of what's in the city of Minneapolis, but it's on city of Minneapolis property. Anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to hear about some of those details, but it's some awareness I wanted to put out there, because I have to say this whole process has given us an opportunity to think more deeply and better about it. So that's all I want to say on this resolution, but I also have a second motion I'd like to make after we pass this concerning the youth seats on SEAC.
All right. Councilmember Fletcher, I'll speak to it.
Thank you, Chair. I just also wanted to acknowledge everyone from iMatter, and really it does make such a difference to have people asking us to push harder. And in the moments when people were asking us on the other side to not go so fast and saying, or, you know, are you crazy? Shouldn't it be 2040? Having you guys calling for 2025 kept us where we had, you know, kind of set our sights and gave us a little courage in some critical moments in this process. So even if we didn't exactly get to your targets, thank you so much for your activism and for your work. And I do support getting your leadership onto the committee to make sure that you're continuing to push us, and to make sure that as you build more power to shift the moment and to shift what we think is possible in the political moment, maybe we can hit these goals quicker as we move along. So thank you so much. I just want to acknowledge that in addition to student voices, I think the two voices missing on SEAC are high school students and the workers who are going to build all this solar capacity. I'm very interested in seeing a labor seat on SEAC as well. So I just want to name that as we're thinking about who should be at the table. The other thing I want to just make sure to do is recognize the work of Lou Collenkamp and of Laura Dorley and Carly Weinman and Robin Garwood, who did a tremendous amount of staff work to get all of this done, to work with the various community organizations. iMatter is just one of them, but the Sierra Club is in the house, and there's a lot of people here who've put a lot of energy into this. MN350 and a lot of other groups have, Community Power, have really given their feedback over time, and we've really appreciated everybody being as engaged as they are. And it really does make a big difference. And at the end of the day, we've done something here that we've actually sat down with city staff and challenged them to say, can we actually get this done? We want to pass a resolution that isn't just to make us feel good, but that is really aspirational and challenging. And we have a plan to actually do it if we can really muster the resources and the will. And I think that that's a big deal. And it's something that a lot of people put a lot of work into. So thank you, everybody, for moving this forward. And thanks for giving me the time to acknowledge that work.
Thank you for being here, Councilmember Fletcher. All right, so we have a motion on the table right now to move approval of the resolution establishing 100% renewable energy goals for Minneapolis. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much.
Let's take a quick moment. That's a big deal, so let's celebrate that.
So I would also like to move to request that SEAC consider the iMatter recommendation to add 2 youth seats to its commission and report back by September 30th to this committee with a recommendation on that. And with that, that also acknowledges that they can, I think, look at how they might want to restructure the group in general and provide a seat for labor or some other entity. I know that they've already talked about this. I have had indications that this timeline will fit what their workload would be, and I think this will make them take it seriously and know that we're interested in supporting them in looking at this.
Second motion.
All right, so we have a motion on a staff direction in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? That motion carries. And I would like to move to receive and file both presentations. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and all of these items have been carried. So thank you, everyone, for all of your hard work, all that came together. So thank you very much. And can we do another round of applause for all that hard work? Good work, team. All right. And I just want to let folks know that we are going to be postponing the number 10 item, the very last one. We had touched base with the Civil Rights Department to talk about contract compliance, their report coming up. So our last presentation for today is in honor of an upcoming Arbor Day. We have the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission annual report. So we're going to be receiving and filing their annual report. And Peggy Booth, chair of the Tree Advisory Commission, will be giving the presentation. Ms. Booth.
Thank you very much, Chair and council members. It's our privilege to be here today to share with you this annual report. I'm Peggy Booth, and I'm a resident and a citizen member of the commission, and the proud mother of 3 Patrick Henry graduates. So. Our report topics today are what the Tree Commission is and does, the value of our urban forests, citizen involvement with public trees, emerald ash borer impacts, and then finally our recommendations. So first we're going to talk about what the Tree Commission is and does. We were created by the Park Board in 2004. A number of us have been involved with tree matters for decades for the city. And our goal is to enhance the Minneapolis urban forest and to improve its long-term health. Among our, our mission, among our goals is to report to the City Council and to the Park Board on issues related to trees, and that's part of why we are here today. So this is a list of our members of the Tree Advisory Commission, and I'd like to acknowledge those people that are here today that are part of it. Don Willicke is our secretary. Robin Garwood is our city council representative. We appreciate his work. And then we have 2 staff with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Philip Patyande, who is the Sustainable Forestry Coordinator, and Craig Pincala, who's the Acting Forest Preservation Coordinator. And so we appreciate very much the work that all the members do that represent a number of different perspectives in the city. So I wanted to give you a quick overview of some of the things we've been involved with, as well as hint at some of the issues and topics that are important in trees in Minneapolis. So there have been 4 years of a study to each year study 200 additional MPRB planted trees that are studied for 5 years to see what their survival rate is. And it's largely 83 to 100% in that first year. And for those trees that have been looked at for multiple years, except the one bad year, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment, it's nearly 90% over many years that the trees survive. The lowest survival is when the weather is harsh, and if they are planted in the fall when there's a dry winter, if it's balled and burlapped, and in commercial and multifamily areas. And so for that 1 year, 4 years ago, when those factors happened, there was only 75% survival since then. And this study is ongoing. We'll learn more. One of our Tree Commission members, Robert Buck, is the volunteer statistician who's working with the Park Board on this study. Secondly, we've advocated for the Forestry Preservation Coordinator, who is here today. This position was funded by the Park Board in 2017, but it's also necessary for the city to contribute funding towards it to make this position a permanent position, not just an acting position. And through Craig's work and the work of this position, there's a lot of collaboration that happens between Public Works and the Forest Preservation Coordinator, between developers and builders and construction projects. So it really is helping us do things wiser and smarter and save a lot of trees. So we really think that it's important that this position become a permanent position. The next thing we've been involved with is working with the city to get better sidewalk construction practices. And following some major windstorms in 2013, the university presented a report to the City Council reporting that there really was, unfortunately, a lot of correlation between city construction practices on sidewalks and streets and the failure of large trees when it comes to big storms. So since then, the city directed staff to confer with both our tree commission as well as the pedestrian advisory commission on policies. And so the city is implementing already a number of practices that make places still great for pedestrians, but also improve the chances that our big trees, which are important for many reasons I'll tell you about later, continue to thrive. So we are making very good progress in this regard. The city's urban forest policy was fully updated by city staff in 2016, and the Tree Commission made recommendations on this, and the Park Board and the Public Works collaborated very well. Forestry specifications were moved to the standard specifications that the city uses so that contractors and builders and so forth have a better sense, right along with their other specifications of what they should be doing. And it's used by consultants, contractors, and city staff. And we really think this makes a difference and appreciate the City Council's support for this work as well. Also, the Commission has advocated for the Park Board's ash canopy replacement plan. Through this plan, 5,000 ash trees per year are being replaced with a diversity of tree species. I'll speak a little later about emerald ash borer, which is the reason for it. But I think it's important to note that we are making good progress in diversifying our street and other public tree species. In 2014, in our public lands and on our streets, there were 13% ash, whereas as of last year, it was only 5% ash. And just to give you an example of how this is being done, this spring, the Park Board is planting 8,000 trees. They would have started in early April. There are right now 6,000 trees sitting, waiting for the snow to be moved or be melted. But it really makes a difference when tree species diversity is looked at both by the public sector as well as private citizens. So we thank the Park Board for thinking ahead on this. The next topic I'll get at is the value of our urban forest. And with trees, everybody has a park in front of their house. And over the weekend, Mother Nature provided a way of highlighting that by putting lots of snow on all of our trees so we could see them even better at this time of year. But we'd rather see them be green because it's that leaf canopy that makes a big difference. And it's been determined that on average, each street tree saves us $100 a year in various services. Whoops, excuse me, I jumped ahead. Trees are an integral, actually I jumped. Sorry, I don't know how I did that. Trees are the part of the city's infrastructure that grows. The day that the city puts in a new sidewalk or street, it starts falling apart. But trees are the opposite. When they are planted, each year their benefits get more and more. And so they really appreciate in value, particularly if we take care of them well. And they are really multi-purpose environmental assets that are as much a part of the infrastructure as our streets and storm sewers and walkways. And they help improve the environment, human health and well-being, and community quality as well as our property values. So the more trees there are, the more the urban heat island is reduced. So we have fewer days where there's heat-related unhealthy air pollution. It's also important to say that the amount of energy that we use to heat our homes and many of our businesses goes down when we have a greater tree canopy cover. We spend less on air conditioning in the summer. We spend less on heating when we have that sheltering effect of trees in the winter. So it very much jives with the energy concerns of this committee and the council. Trees have also been shown through research to have social values. They can help reduce crime rates in areas. There's some studies that say where you have higher tree density, you have lower crime rates. They can calm people with ADHD. And they can also speed up the recovery of hospital patients who are able to seek tree canopy cover. When we lose trees, we all lose. So, for example, the American Journal of Preventive Medicine looked at cities further east and south from us in the Midwest that were faced by emerald ash borer, and deaths increased in counties with emerald ash borer because of the reduction and loss of the tree canopy cover. There were over 15,000 more cardiovascular related deaths and over 6,000 additional deaths due to respiratory disease because of that lack of tree canopy. So each year, Minneapolis street trees provide energy savings, reduce stormwater runoff, increase property value, and improvements to air quality that totals over $19 million of value. Or another way of thinking of it is for every dollar that the city and the park board invest in trees, we get back $1.80 in environmental and other economic benefits to the city. It's important to realize that tree values are determined by how much leaf area that trees have. So we can think of the amount of benefits as equaling the amount of tree canopy cover. So when we have big trees, they provide us the most benefits. When we plant small trees, they're an investment in the future. But it is a great loss to our environment every time a storm strikes or we have diseases that affect our trees. So this is a map based on satellite imagery in 2015, and the green areas give you a sense of what the tree canopy cover is. Now, if you look a little more closely at wards 5 and 4, you could still see, and this is like 3 or 4 years after the tornado hit, the path of the tornado. It had a direct impact on the tree canopy cover in those areas, and as well as other impacts on the residents. And as a result, their environmental quality, those environmental benefits that we all expect from our tree canopy are diminished. So we think it's very important to do whatever we can to keep our trees healthy and to be able to respond promptly when they are destroyed, both on public property and private property. The next topic is about citizen involvement with public trees. And as was mentioned, Minneapolis has a wonderful Arbor Day tradition. Just to give you an example, in 2017, over 250 trees were planted down by Lake Hiawatha of 68 different types of trees. So we've learned not to all just plant too many ash or elm or linden. Over 1,500 people were involved in a whole lot of different activities, tree climbing, tree planting, tree-related games and activities, tree adventures and education. And we invite you all to come to the 2018 Arbor Day a week from Friday on April 27th from 4 to 8 p.m. at Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Park Jr. in South Minneapolis. We think it'll be a great opportunity for you and your families to see what trees mean to us. Another way we have citizen involvement is the Volunteer Citizen Pruner program. And volunteers are trained to trim suckers and small broken branches off of trees. This complements or supplements what city staff do and lets them take care of the things that need bigger equipment and more expertise. And it's something that's safe, that safely can be done too. And I'm one of these volunteer citizen pruners. I think it's a very good volunteer for all kinds of people in the neighborhoods. So our primary recommendation this year to the park board is to fund a forestry outreach coordinator. This is essential to oversee and expand the citizen pruners. I and other citizen pruners will be doing a lot more volunteer work, but there isn't the staff to organize that volunteer activity. It will also help sustain that wonderful Arbor Day event. In addition, we feel that this position would help encourage adoption and care for fruit trees on parklands. We have a lot of opportunity there, and it can really help all kinds of people benefit from fruit in our city and accessible to us. Secondly, think that the Forestry Outreach Coordinator could work with groups to promote public tree watering in all kinds of different creative ways with different groups that are interested in helping support that. The coordinator could also work with groups to increase trees in downtown and to implement boulevard swale gardens that help with water quality. This person could also do more to engage with youth and increase involvement in underserved and low-income communities. And there's more things too, but those are the highlights we wanted to hit. Excuse me. The last topic I'll be speaking on is emerald ash borer impacts. So emerald ash borer are these little green bugs shown here on the penny to give you a sense of scale that came from Asia. And unfortunately, the losses are now affecting most parts of the city as the as the insect infestation increases. So I'm going to quickly go through a series of slides so you can see the neighborhoods that were affected year by year. So 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you can start to see it accelerating in 16, 17, and already in 2018, we've got another 5 neighborhoods that have confirmed cases of emerald ash borer greatly impacting their trees. So the park board is doing an excellent job of slowing the spread by detecting and removing infested trees. But if you look at information from cities that have had emerald ash borer longer, you see that there's what's sometimes referred to as a death curve, that as the time goes on, the rate and mortality of these trees accelerates. So we're here in year 9, and we have coming the worst impact to the city. Now, thanks to that ash canopy replacement plan, the park board is proactively managing the ash trees on public lands. Of the 1 million trees in Minneapolis, 200,000 are estimated to be ash. 40,000 of these were public trees on boulevards and parks, but by the beginning of 2018, already half of these ash had been removed and replanted on the public land. Therefore, our biggest concern right now is that most ash trees are in private yards, and people don't know what is out there and what's going to be happening. But there are a lot of big, beautiful ash trees on many people's private yards. All ash trees, and I should clarify, mountain ash aren't true ash, so I'm not talking about them, but all white ash, black ash, and green ash trees are susceptible to the emerald ash borer. And removal of untreated infested trees is mandatory by the city. And furthermore, if you compare ash trees to elms or oaks, ash trees just fail. They start falling apart as they get big and old. And so we're very concerned if people just ignore it, they'll get to a point where it will damage property or hopefully not people. It's been known to happen though. So we think it's very important that the public be better involved in how to take care of ash trees on their own yards. So our first recommendation to the city is to do more to communicate to property owners about the high risks of emerald ash borer and what actions to take. Property owners should know if they have an ash tree. They should know that emerald ash borer is likely to kill their tree, and soon. We're speaking of, a handful of years. And they should learn their options. Their options are to do like the park board is doing, which is remove and replant trees with a greater diversity. Private property owners can treat their trees with insecticide, but they have to recognize that there are risks with that and has to be done every year. And once you stop, it's as if you had never done it. Or they can wait. But the problem is if people wait, it's likely to take the control out of their hands. And removing a big tree in the backyard, like the one under the yellow writing here, can be thousands of dollars. So it's not an incidental decision that a person has to make and budget. The second recommendation we have for the city is to allow proactive removal of ash trees to be assessed and paid over time. Right now, people can do this if the tree is condemned, if it already has emerald ash borer. But we think that that is a tool that the city could offer homeowners to allow them to more carefully plan when they remove the tree and have that assessed and thereby paid for over a longer period of time. So finally, to recap our recommendations, we recommend to the Park Board that they fund the Forestry Outreach Coordinator to help improve community engagement, awareness, and outreach. And for the city, we ask you to urge property owners to address risky ash trees. And we ask the city to do more to communicate to property owners about the high risks of emerald ash borer and what actions can be taken. And then again, we ask the city to allow proactive removal of ash trees to be assessed and paid over time. So with that, I appreciate very much your attention, and we can answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Booth. I have a question from Councilmember Gordon.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I just want to limit my questions maybe to the most critically important for me to find out now. Have you had any conversations yet with city staff about the idea of assessing for the tree removal on private property?
We have talked about this at our committee meetings. Robin, do you know if there's been any further conversations on that? The question that Councilmember Gordon asked was whether we've had any further conversations on allowing people to have a proactive tree removal assessed and put on their taxes. No, we just started the conversation. Okay, we've just started the conversation with regulatory services.
Well, good that you've started the conversation, and I don't know how we could necessarily help, but maybe I'll reach out to NOAA too, because I do know that through reg services there are some housing code issues that can be addressed, and this, I think, typically we can actually order the removal of a tree, and I think then that becomes a really cumbersome obstacle for somebody who doesn't have the money to pay for it. So maybe there's a way to do that. I like that suggestion. I also really appreciate that you're going to the Park Board to get that staff position funded. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and our presentation to the Park Board is this coming Wednesday, so we're seeing both of you in 1 week.
All right. Well, tell them that we're working hard on our recommendation.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Gordon. I Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Cunningham and Ms. Booth for your presentation. And I guess this is just a comment to my colleagues. And, I think certainly as a council and as a city, we should be really encouraging the proactive removal of emerald ash trees. But I do, if we have an assessment which is paid over time, I would like us to consider how do we do that without charging interest to struggling property owners that, would tend to exacerbate their situation. So please consider that.
Thank you, Council Vice President. I have a question for you about, has there been any sort of specific work that's been done to restore the trees that were lost during the 2011 tornado in North Minneapolis?
Yeah. Philip, would you be? Yeah, I'm asking Philip Patyandi with the Park Board to talk about that. And while Philip's coming up here, one other program that should be aware of is the nonprofit group Tree Trust has the City Trees program. And I know that they've given priority to residents who are trying to replant their own yards to people that were in that affected area.
Hello, council members. Yes, so Peggy just mentioned Tree Trust thinking of private property. The public property trees after the North Minneapolis tornado all the street trees have been replanted. In fact, I really encourage folks to go drive those. It's some of the best establishing trees in our forest right now. They're really coming into their own and really taking on since that our response. We had a big Arbor Day push back after that storm incident of replanting all those trees with volunteers and of course a ton of our staff, and so they're really shining. So go check them out.
Great. Thank you so much. Councilmember Gordon, did you have a follow-up question?
Well, no, it was really just a comment to Councilmember Jenkins. I think there might be times when we also want to look at some funding and some assistance we can give some people for the tree removal, even beyond assessment or no interest on that assessment. I know that there's some repairs that can be made on homes. Also, this might be another option, but nothing's due until the home is sold or something, so it can be held off. But I think that people won't even want to take advantage of it if there is an assessment and if they don't have any money or feel like they can't afford it.
Yeah, I think we have to be creative in this process. So
Maybe you could tell us offhand, how much does it cost to get a very large ash tree removed? Is this in the hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars?
You know, it depends a lot on where it's located, but it could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for a very large one in someone's backyard, where they have to use a crane to take it out piece by piece. So it's not insubstantial.
All right. Well, seeing no further questions, thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you all of you for your work with this. I think that oftentimes when we look at environmental sustainability and environmental issues, something like an urban forest really can be overlooked, considered really niche, but we know better that it's so deeply intertwined with environmental justice overall. So thank you so much for your commitment to this work, all the volunteer work that you do. So thank you very much. And I would like to make the motion to receive and file this item. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and that item is received and filed. Seeing no further business before, actually, I have to make the official motion. So give me 1 second here. I would like to make a motion to postpone item 10, the Contract Compliance Division 2017 fourth quarter report and annual summary to next cycle. Do I have to get a second for that? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. That item carries. Seeing no further business before this committee, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.